Have you ever looked around at a group of grown women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and thought to yourself, why does this still feel like middle school? Why does it still feel confusing and awkward and hurtful and sometimes just downright cruel in this circle? Why are there still women smiling in your face one minute and then acting like you don't exist the second you two are alone? Why are there still people who call themselves your friend, but their behavior tells a very different story? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I am so tired of this. And if you've ever found yourself replaying conversations in your head, wondering what you did wrong in a female friendship, if you've ever questioned your worth because of how another woman treated you, or felt excluded or dismissed, or subtly punished, or quietly iced out by someone who claimed to be in your corner, this video is for you. Today, we're talking about something that is honestly so heartbreaking, but it's just not surprising at all because I see it so much. We're talking about mean girl behavior in grown ass women. What it looks like, why it happens, and what in the heck we're supposed to do about it. Long after we should have aged out of this nonsense, in my opinion. Hi, I'm Amy Rose White. I'm an integrative psychotherapist. I've had 2 decades in private practice and over 30 years of listening to women talk about this exact dynamic. And here's the truth I hear about in my office constantly and in conversations with friends, and yes, every once in a while, even in my own life. And I think you already know exactly what I'm talking about. But let's break down what mean girl behavior actually looks like in adulthood because it's not always as obvious as it is when we're little. It's not always overt bullying. A lot of the time, it's more subtle. It's kind of quiet. It has, plausible deniability. And it's that woman who smiles at you just a little too hard in a group setting, but when you're one on one, suddenly she doesn't even see you, doesn't hear you, won't acknowledge you, despite the fact that you know she does. It's that woman who asks you to share resources and contacts and information, things that help her, but somehow you're never invited to the networking event she put on. And when you ask about it, she shrugs it off like, oh, it was just a casual thing. Right. Or it could be that awkward silence when you share a big achievement, like a promotion or a success or a financial win. Maybe everyone else says, congratulations, we're so happy for you. And one person suddenly has nothing to say. Or it's finding out that someone you see regularly, someone in your extended circle, has been saying nasty things about you behind your back. And when it finally gets back to you, you feel that familiar gut drop, that sense of, what did I do feeling? And here's the hardest part, these women are not strangers typically, they're friends. They're colleagues, they're neighbors, they're other moms often. Women who say, we should get together sometime. And yet their behavior tells a very different story. Unfortunately, this kind of behavior is incredibly common, and I want to talk about where I believe it comes from. At the core of almost all mean girl behavior is one thing: deep, unresolved insecurity. There's something about you that threatens something unresolved inside them. Maybe you have something they want, maybe you represent something they wish they were, or remind them of someone from their past. Maybe you created something in your life they don't believe they can create. And instead of getting curious or instead of being inspired, instead of saying, God, tell me how you did that, or I just love your energy, I want more of that in my life, they punish you for it instead. They distance, they exclude, they undermine and tear down quietly or loudly. And here's my theory. Based on decades of watching this play out, by the time a woman reaches about 35, she has usually made a very clear internal choice. I'm not saying this is conscious, but it's a clear choice. She's either confronted her own insecurity, she can see that that comes up in her, and looked honestly at her own shadow, see my video on shadow work here, and recognized her capacity for jealousy, comparison, and competitiveness, because we're very encouraged in that way as women. We all have that capacity. We're exposed to it very early. Other girls, push us into that, and we're socialized into it starting at 6, 7, 8 years old, which is so sad. Or she has stayed in denial. And by staying in that denial, she hasn't grown out of that competitive energy. She hasn't evolved past it. She basically hasn't adulted out of it and chosen a different way of being around other women. And those two paths create two different, very kinds of women. So let's talk about the first group. I would like to think I have grown into this person. I call them uplifters. An uplifter meets another woman who is happy, successful, attractive, vibrant, and she feels excited and like energized by that. She wants to be around it. She celebrates it. She's inspired by it. She doesn't steal from her. She doesn't try to copy her exact look, voice, or identity or something weird like that. She doesn't feel erased by the wonderful presence of this other person, and she lets that woman shine. And she finds it easy, natural even, to tell other people how amazing her friend is because she has an internal sense of security. She knows her success doesn't diminish mine. She knows she has her own unique brand of specialness, her own shine in her own lane, and that feels good to her. Now let's talk about the second group. I call those women the competitors. By 35 and beyond, these women are often less interested in growth and far more interested in comparison. They feel better by tearing someone else down. They meet a single attractive woman and suddenly don't want to introduce her to their partner at a party. Not because they're bad people, but because their fear is running the show. Fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough, fear of losing status, attention, or love or belonging. And listen, it is human to have those feelings come up. That's not the problem. The problem is what we do with them. It's when we let those feelings dictate how we treat other women. And that's when we cross into competitor territory. That's when we start hurting others to soothe our own insecurity. And to me, that is so deeply sad. I am recording this during a week when more of the Epstein files have come out. And if we didn't already know this, those of us who've worked with survivors of sexual abuse, childhood trauma, and systemic harm, we know this now. It is so difficult to be a girl or a woman in this world. I'm not saying boys and men have nothing to battle. They do. I have two boys. But it has never been easy to be a woman in the world, at least not since matriarchal cultures. And the last thing we need to do, the last thing, is to make it harder for women to feel safe, confident, joyful, and free to be themselves. And yet that's exactly what mean girl behavior does. It fractures trust, it isolates people, it silences us, and I am just so over it. So what do we do? So first, I think we talk about it, which is why I'm making this video out loud, honestly. We need to really own that this dynamic is out there and say no more. Time to stop pretending this doesn't exist. And second, I think we start calling this behavior what it is. Not miscommunication or vibes or she's just busy, but competition rooted in insecurity. Obviously, there could be other things, but that's the root of it. And third, I think we need to help women learn how to recognize this within themselves, because I was not above this. I am not above this now. And when I was younger, there were women who intimidated me, women I was aloof around, and women I kind of ignored, or women I spoke poorly about. And when I saw that in myself, I did not like it. And if I could go back, this is like maybe early 30s, 20s, I would hug those women. I would tell them how much I admired them, how inspired I was by them, how much I actually learned from them. Because now that's how I see women, I think, are amazing, as role models, not as threats. And you don't have to like everyone, that's not what this is about. It's not about being best friends with every woman you meet. Discernment is really healthy. We get to choose our circle. We get to say, she's fine, but she's not my person or my people. But that's different than intentional exclusion. That is different than gossip. That is different than quietly voting someone off the island in your friend group. So I want to challenge you gently but honestly. Look at your own behavior. Are you gossiping? Are you saying one thing and meaning another with your behavior? Are you keeping someone out or on the edge of the circle because they threaten you, even though you actually think they're pretty great secretly? And if so, you can stop and do the opposite. Because when we lean towards the women that we feel jealous or intimidated by, rather than away from them, something really incredible happens. We realize she's human. She has insecurities. She has fears. She has doubts. She doubts herself too. And suddenly that threat just dissolves. So please, bring this conversation to your next girls' brunch. Bring it to your book club. Bring it up after the gym as you're walking to the car. Ask your inner people, how can we be uplifters to each other, especially after 40, 50, and beyond? There is no excuse anymore. And to the mean girls themselves, what do we do when someone's behaving this way towards us? Two choices. So we can confront them directly with something in the vein of, hey, I noticed that I wasn't invited to XYZ, and we share a lot of mutual friends. So this has kind of created some awkward conversations with some of the people that we both know and love. I was hoping we could talk about it. I will tell you from personal experience that this does not always go well. Generally, people don't like being, surprise, surprise, called out on their obvious poor behavior. But it does give people a chance to rise to the occasion, acknowledge, what they're doing, and make it better. At minimum, it lets them know you know, but it does come with certain risks, of course. It could create more drama, more conflict, and more awkwardness. But I'm not sure it gets really more awkward than when you know someone doesn't like you, but they just aren't willing to come out and say it, and instead do a lot of weird passive aggressive things just to convey that. Option two, or B, I can't remember what I said, is just to carry on with your life. Focus on the people that know and love you and create your own fun and magic. This is not so easy when there's a lot of overlapping friend groups and close mutual friends with a couple mean girls sprinkled in, but it is the option that sometimes just preserves our dignity and our serenity and our time and resources and energy. I would love to know in the comments, how have you handled situations like this and what has worked out the best for you? I guess the most important thing to remember is if someone doesn't give you a complaint or come to you with a problem, or explain a beef that they have with you, explaining something that is hurtful and ask for a resolution, there just isn't really anything on our end we can do other than continue to go on shining our light brightly in the world. And in the words of an old friend of mine, they can eat their heart out. I want to know what you think. How do you cope with mean girl behavior? What does it show up like in your life? What have you done? How do you see it? How do you see it play out? And what has worked for you or not? I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks so much for liking, sharing, and hyping this video. Check out these videos below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.